Okay, today on the Income Flip podcast, I've got Lance Hood. Lance, thank you, brother, for joining us. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here talking with you. We've had some great conversations. I can't wait to see what we get into today.
I know. Well, first off, right, like, I'm just gonna give you a shout out for being a badass jiu-jitsu, like extraordinary. Like for those that don't know, like I wrestled in D1. I wrestled D1 in college, right? And Lance and I were just kind of shooting the shit before the podcast, and it came out that he's done a lot of you were like fighting, right? You were like doing. It wasn't just jiu-jitsu. Like you were actually like cage fighting. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I was going to make a living of it. I live close to Davenport, Iowa, which is where Pat Miletich and all the guys were that were,
Oh
for
yeah.
a time period, running the UFC. Yeah, there just wasn't enough money into it, so I had to go back into business. I loved it. I'm a hands-on guy, but now I have to use my head.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. Like I love to unpack the story of why somebody got into what they're doing and how they ended up navigating into the particular niche that they're in. And you fell into the niche of really helping people identify maybe the right franchise that is the right fit for them, right? But
hmm
did you start off that way? Like, tell me a little bit about your business journey and how did you arrive to doing what you're doing today?
Sure, I will condense it so I don't bore anybody. But I was born in a family business. My grandpa came back from World War II as a B-17 fighter pilot to his family's hatchery. And they would sell like chicks to farmers that would raise them, use them for meat and eggs. And you know what? The market went out of that. That just was not something that modern society was doing. And so they were tired of being broke. And so they just kept thinking about it. And they're like, what do we do? And so they decided to raise them for meat. And that fell out, and they decided, well, we have eggs. They bought one of those little egg presses, literally the thing that most people have that clamps onto your table. They bought it, and they made noodles with that and started selling them to local grocery stores and built that into a multi million dollar business where we would sell things by people by 8 or 12 truckloads at a time. So it
Wow.
was a big business. It was 24/7, like half of the day on Sunday we would shut down to do a full clean and be back up and running again. And I eventually worked into managing the plant. I started and did most of the roles, and I grew up there. And then our competitor, which was a publicly traded company, kept sliding checks across the table. And finally, my family's like, they tapped out. They're like, okay, we're going to sell. And the people that came in were just terrible. And at the
Hmm.
time, I was a semi-pro competitive fighter, and it just the environment was too unfriendly, and I was probably gonna punch somebody. So I decided to leave on my own, and I didn't know what to do. So I talked to a friend who was building some houses, and we found a way to buy a large tract of land, and then sell that to some developers that wanted to turn it into homes. And so that within 9 months of me quitting my job, I had made 3 years income.
Wow. Crazy.
But I didn't enjoy doing it. I didn't want to influence people, because you don't know what your profits are. So you get the land as cheap as possible so that you hopefully turn a profit because you don't necessarily know your numbers.
Hmm.
And so my big passion was always personal development and inspiration. And I picked up a book when I was trying to write jokes. I picked up a book from Tony Robbins called Unlimited Power, and I was like, man, this is cool. And then I started picking up all the books on success and personal development. So I created like a podcast here. I created teleseminars, and we would feature these famous speakers and platform speakers on all kinds of human potential topics, and that's really where I got my groove, started a business, and it was great. But I had people, as successful as we were, that said, you know what? They would get coaching packages from these guys, but then obviously there was probably a more one-on-one, a higher value offering, and they would just go, I didn't get any value from it. I'm like, did you attend the coaching? And they're like, well, no. They just felt good by buying the coaching. It was like a relief, like my life is going to get better. But then they didn't attend the classes, and with coaching, you actually have to think about it and apply it. It's like a shaping you thing, not like a done for you thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't like the people just sitting there going, I just don't feel like I'm getting benefit from this. And so I'm like, well, how can I help people get a benefit despite themselves? Because we all procrastinate, or we buy a book and never read it, right? How can I help people avoid this? And I realized with franchising, you can see a 3 year history, but if you've been in the industry for 8 years, you actually have access to 8 years plus 3 years of history. You've seen how it's going, and you get to know people. And when you're behind the scenes, you know the companies that are better. You understand the cultures, and we all communicate, and we know if some brand is good. If they're not good, we talk about it. And you can, but just knowing that a brand is there is not, just seeing a brand somewhere is not an indicator of success, because um, if you think about it, that's like the stock market. If you know what to buy and when to sell, everybody gets the same result. But with a franchise, with the stock market, you're investing in other people that are running that company, because there's other people running it, and you're betting on those people. When you own your own franchise business, you're using a template with support and help, but you're running it. I mean, there are a few where they'll kind of run it for you, where you can run it through a manager, but you're responsible for your results. People don't realize that. It's kind of like a race car, whereas you come to me and you're like, hey, I want to get in the Daytona 500 and help me pick out a car. And I'm like, okay, let's understand your background and let's pick this thing out. And then at the end of the day, the franchise, that's your pit crew that's talking to you and saying, okay, here's what you need to do and all this stuff, but you have to drive it.
Yeah, you're the
So
driver.
you have to have personal accountability, and you have to lean on yourself, and you have to lean back on the, you know what, the sucky part is getting it up to running, and then it's about learning how to step on the gas and avoid the corners. And so when I look at people, I take my background in psychology and personal development, and I look at what they're used to doing, because you can look at your finances and you can look at all this other stuff, but you really have to understand the person, because you don't want your business fighting against you as a person,
Mm.
and you don't want to be in business with people. I know I'm talking a lot. I'm sorry.
No, this is great.
you
It's great.
you don't want to be in people that you're in conflict with. You just don't mesh with that person. It's just hard to do business, and you don't enjoy it. And yeah, you can be successful, but it's like a bad relationship. So the culture, the people, what you're good at, what you believe is successful. I get to look at the financials and I'm like, this business is really successful. And this person's like, there's no money in it. And I'm like, okay, I see the numbers. You have a theory, but
Well,
yeah.
let's take it back to the beginning, right? And I want to do this for the audience. When there's a lot of investors listening to this, right? Developers, investors, agents,
Mhm.
and everybody's on this journey. We're all on this journey of what I call creating a cash machine, like something that's gonna like pump
Mhm.
out and like hopefully a massive amount of cash to pay for your bills and pay for your life, and then give you the money to buy assets. Some of those assets could be a franchise, piece of real estate, you know. And so we call that the income flip, right? Like when you have more highly leveraged income than active income, right? You've
Mhm.
accumulated a lot of these assets, and you do have managers running those businesses, or you have a property manager managing those assets for you, right? And what I have realized through the years of coaching people through this process, I'm not really a coach, like teaching people through this process, but I am a coach for my owners because I'm in partnership with people. I realized that, just like you said, their life experiences, what they've listened to before, like whether they were listening to Jim Rohn or Tony Robbins or nothing, like there was this basic thing that I needed to really show them how to do first, which was like, I need you to learn how to sell. You need to sell. You need to learn how to sell, do sales and marketing, right? And I would imagine, Lance, that you might get a lot of W 2 people that have never really been in a sales or business development role before, who want to buy out the franchise because they're thinking, like, I want to be my own boss. I want to do my own thing. I want to be in control of my future, as they should. That's like a great thought to have. But they've never jumped outside that comfort zone of going to the to the networking events or making the calls or doing things like that. How do you reconcile those two things when you're trying to match people to the right franchise, right? Because sometimes I'm just like, there's this whole thing they got to learn before they even earn the right, in my opinion, to own and buy one of those businesses. Okay, I'll
A
shut up.
hundred,
You too.
100%. Well, you know what? I'm what you're saying is something that I realized, and so I literally look for people who have a sales background.
Oh, well, there you go. Right?
Because they have people with a lot of work in sales, especially the harder the sales, they have more confidence in their ability. They realize I can talk to people and I can make a sale and I can make money. And so they believe in themselves more. Where the people who want to be the good guys and don't want to do sales, they're more timid toward it. They're like, I don't like it. Whatever they're doing, they're shying away from it. But sales is the oxygen of every business. And so that's one of the most important parts, and that's what you have to turn the gas on when you get going. So when I have somebody who really shies away from sales, I look for things that don't necessarily um, force into that. Like there are a few things that are close to being investor businesses where the it's managed by the company for a share of revenue, right? And then the reason that they do that is the more people that participate, the greater their buying power. So it's advantageous for them to go, you know what, we'll do it for 30% because it increases our inventory budget and everybody gets stuff much cheaper. But for the most part, there's other things like we switched to a marketing based company. So I don't want to do sales, but the corporate has people, or I actually have developed a lot of resources in the area to where we know marketing teams that will fill your business with customers using
Interesting.
marketing, so you don't have to do sales. And then the when you interact with the customer, if it's a bigger ticket thing, and that takes an actual personal conversation, then you have your salespeople jump in on those booked appointments or those leads, leaving the owner to just be the CEO and run it.
Well,
But yeah.
let's unpack this even a little bit
Hmm.
further, right? Part of this is that as we've built what we call the 7 levels of freedom framework, right, for entrepreneurs that go through grid. There's all these different levels that people are leveling up all the time, right? The foundation level is kind of exactly what you spoke about in the beginning, Lance, when you were like, I went on a personal development journey, right? Like, okay, that is level one, guys. Like, you need to go on this personal development journey, and that is we have a whole program just specifically for that. But if you don't have a solid foundation of like, I can make this happen, I can do, the glass is half full versus half empty kind of mentality. Like, if bad things happen, that's okay. It serves me kind of mentality, like anti-fragile mentality. You need that foundation in any business that you're building. Well, level two, if you can get that and you upgrade the level two is just about predictable income, which is where that sales and marketing piece comes in. But some people enter in to, I would imagine, to wanting to buy a franchise when they've already run like a large organization for somebody else, right? And so they've stacked all these skills already, like management skills, maybe business development skills. So they're already entering into at a level three, I would say, of competence where they've run a business unit before, they've run a division before. Like you and I had talked offline, you're like, I love sales managers, right? Because they're like they had to hold people accountable, they had to direct. So I would imagine you're also evaluating, all the skills that somebody brings to the table, and then
Hmm.
matching those skills with maybe the type of business. I'm curious, do you
Hmm.
do personality assessments on them as well?
Well, I actually used to, but my whole background is in psychology. Like I got certified back in when I was younger. I spent a whole month getting a whole intensive certification in neurolinguistic programming.
Mm-hmm.
Studied psychology. I have whole bookshelves of nothing but psychology books, and a lot of those tests, I found that I could actually pick that up in conversation with people because I'd
Mm-hmm.
spent so much time into it. I have used things like the DISC assessment and all these other systems that I think are great. In fact, I made my whole family do it when they were younger, and I'm like, "Oh, you're green, you're yellow," all this stuff, and I did all those things, and there is value to that. But I do look at that now. It's a little more intuitive just from doing it all these years. But I think that there is value in people taking tests and understanding your personality. If somebody really doesn't want to do a lot of stuff like that, then sometimes vending is the right match because you're not going to have to deal with some of these things. But you're like you mentioned Tony Robbins. He said something like the quality of your life is how comfortable you can be with being uncomfortable. Your comfort zone holds you back, and that's why sometimes people get partners in business
Mm.
is because they say that, well, I'll have more access to resources, there'll be more people on the team, but it's like sometimes you don't have the confidence in yourself yet. And
Yeah.
this is like a whoopee. It's like, this person will be here for me. But I'm telling you, like, once you've done it and you've started these businesses, you just fight through it, just like, what, whatever it takes, I'm going to do it, whatever it takes, the uncomfortable parts. Then
Whatever it takes. I love it.
you are bigger on the other side, and that level of problem doesn't bother you. And then when you face your next problem that's even bigger, and you just fight through it, you put in the dark hours when you're all alone late at night working, and you figure it out, then you're bigger, and that level of problem doesn't phase you anymore. And pretty soon you have such a comfort level with chaos going on around you, and you're a problem solver, you're kicking ass. But you're never going to do that if you're trying to stay at the level you're at. So if you want something more and bigger, you are going to have to embrace it and become a bigger person through the challenges that will make you into who you want,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I believe that. Right. A lot. Funny. My high school quote senior year was, "That which does not kill me only makes me stronger." Obviously, a wrestler mentality right there coming out. Right. I was like, just bring it on, man. I'm made of steel, just to keep getting stronger and stronger. And that idea is always just stuck with me. Like, it builds me, right? It's like I take it in and it builds me. Okay, I think I'll probably be pleasantly surprised at how many franchises are out there, right? Like, Lance, how many? Like, give us like an idea of like the types of like the spectrum of franchises that are out there that as you're talking to people and evaluating who they are, you're probably categorizing them into buckets based on life skills and experiences and interest, right? Like, give us a sampling.
So, tell you how many at first, nobody has the exact number because they're always starting up and they're always leaving, right? So, there's around 4,000 franchise companies out there. And there's about one new brand a day starting out, and there's about one brand a day that says, for whatever reason, like, we don't want to franchise anymore. We're just going to become a chain. We don't want to coach people. We're just going to own it. And then within the industry, what makes a franchise for the most part? 99% of franchises are businesses that need a local presence. That's why corporate doesn't run it, because if it didn't need a local presence, corporate would just do it all themselves. The
Hmm.
only reason that they would get into franchising versus being a chain is they don't want to manage the location. The owner will manage it because they have a financial investment in it, and that they just want to be a coaching organization. So franchisers are coaching organizations that let you invest. Now they can even grow faster because other people invest their money to grow an outlet. But what people don't understand is the amount of money it takes for a franchise company to become a franchise and then to fund that support and development to get off the ground. So it is a financial burden on the company to do this. But as far as categories of businesses, thinking about local, there's everything. There's you think of home services, like all those guys in trucks and vans that drive around. That's a great model because you don't have this big building. So you either have a location that people go to, so think about like a food place, right? You go to the location, or you have a service or something where you have a territory and you service everybody in the territory where you go to them.
Hmm.
Could even be internet marketing where you go to the business and you advise them and help them. So that's the two kind of basic models is people come to you or you go to them. Well, if they come to you and you have a business, it's going to cost a lot of money, right? For the building the
Yeah, the brick and
construction.
mortar, what you're saying is like there's a
Yep.
brick and mortar, there's a cost.
Hmm.
So it might be like an ice
Yep.
cream parlor
Yes.
or a massage studio or something like that. You've got to build it out. You got to get the lease. You got to build it out. You got to do all that.
Hmm.
Pizza franchise, right?
Yep. Think of
Okay.
the cost of your house and think much higher, because
Okay.
the business probably costs more to build than your house maybe. So you have that, but for industries there is like home services and everything under the sun there. There's also commercial services that are like home services or
So when you say home
where.
services, let me go back. So power washing, maybe like two guys in a truck, uh, HVAC, roofing, like
Hmm.
all of that stuff, right? There's
Yeah,
probably a
those
branch.
those core services like that are great because when you're think about it, if it's winter or if it's the middle of summer, if your HVAC system doesn't work, you could be freezing out and you have no heat. It could be
Mm,
boiling out and you have no air conditioning. So people want it fixed today.
yeah.
And your employees are techs that went to school for this. They're committed to the trade. They actually paid their own money and went through school to learn how to work for you, right?
Hmm.
And if you look at this people go, oh, well, there's 100 guys in my town that do that, and they all have these small little trucks. I'm like, great, that's what you need. Your market is fractured. You
Hmm.
don't have a bunch of clear leaders. You have a bunch of people who would easily like to be your subcontractors because if you can suck up all the leads, where are they getting work? So those people will easily be your subs, and a lot of them will be your workers. So you don't have the training. You're not maybe qualified to do that, but your workers are. Just like a big business, they have all kinds of. I've helped people own urgent care clinics. Well, you can't pretend to be a doctor. You're
Hmm.
just the manager. But so yeah, so all those industries. So if we list them out, you look at the core services like electric, plumbing, HVAC. You have roofers. You have people that do the power washing, lawn care, tree care. I mean, all that stuff. Those are great service, great industries because there's a low cost to get started as far as a business goes because you
Hmm.
have like a truck and a small office and some equipment, and it's marketing heavy. You know, you're
Yeah.
going to use marketing to get those leads, and but when and then you switch to B2B, now you're going to use sales. You're going to be doing cold calls and reach outs and probably use LinkedIn and some digital strategies, but it's a sales thing there. And then another industry would be like beauty. So there's like there is like haircut plates or salon suites, which is more of a real estate type play. There's all kinds of stuff in there. There's some great prestigious businesses, sauna suites. And then you go into like food, which there's a lot of food places, but the danger of food is this: people see it and they think it's simple. I make food myself all the time. I like serving my friends. I love food is what brings us all together. Everybody needs food, but they don't need your food today. And what I love people who own food restaurants because I want to eat there, but I don't know if I'm a fan of buying one because there's two things. It's very expensive to start. Like if it's got a drive-through, it might be $850,000 to over
Hmm.
a million, could be less, and then you're going to sell a $10 item. So you see a full drive-through and you're like, that place has a full drive-through. Yeah, well, at one third of food costs being profit, so let's just say that's $3 out of your $10. So you see six cars in there. That's what, $18. So you're going, dude, these guys are killing it. Yeah, $18,
Yeah.
and you got to
I
pay
need
for
a
that lunch.
lot of, I mean, I'm not that educated around it, and I've always been like, you gotta sell a lot of hamburgers just to pay the rent here, right? But there are some
Yeah.
things that I've looked at. I've seen like these like little coffee bars. Like I'm like, I remember being in California one time. Was it California? No, it was in Australia. And I was outside this little coffee bar in Bondi Beach. And it was crazy. It looked like they were just printing money day and night. And it fit like three people behind the counter. And they're just cranking out coffee and lattes and everything. And I was like, that made sense to me. Or, coffee as a drug makes sense to me. Anyhow. You know.
Oh yeah, well it's the number one acceptable drug we have is
That's right.
coffee. I've had two today,
Yeah.
but you know what? You know one of the secrets is if you're gonna have a food place, you want to drive through because
Mhm.
that's your volume, and if you don't, you're forcing people to get out of the car. You have to have a big parking lot. They're gonna wait in line. You're gonna so whether it is food or beverage, you want to drive through type business, and some of them having only drive through, like kind of what you're saying, that's a solid business model. And with coffee, you're selling mostly water, right?
Yeah.
My family's business was pasta and noodles. It was a lot of flour, water, and salt. And when times were tough, everybody falls back on pasta because it's inexpensive and you can eat, you know?
Hmm.
And so yeah, so those business models work. Another one would be I like is wine bars, but it's hard because some of them are very pretentious.
Hmm.
but but it's a
Lance,
great model.
I have a question regarding what makes a good franchise and a bad franchise. Like, if I'm evaluating a franchise out there, what are some of the things that I should be looking for that you're like, hey, this is par for the course? Like, they've got their stuff together because
Hmm.
this is what they have in place. Like, I can imagine there might be people out there that decide, I'm going to franchise my little business,
Hmm.
and they don't have everything built out super well just yet,
Hmm.
right? So I'd love to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, well, I'm going to answer that question, but I think we should also we'll end up going back and talking about how to evaluate it because what you see online is just sales and marketing. It is not an effective way to evaluate a brand.
Hmm.
It's just designed to make you into a lead and put your information somewhere so that someone can talk to you and sell you something. The real information is when you engage with them because they're going to share their trade secrets. They're going to share stuff they don't want to give to their competitors to reverse engineer. Also, when you get their franchise disclosure document, it's going to have a lot of stuff the government says that you have to have to let people evaluate your brand. And then talking with the actual franchisees. These lists that were made out there, when I got started a long time ago, I started looking at the lists and I found out these lists, they're full of it. There's companies that show up. I just got a thing today where one of these companies emailed me doing what I do. Hey, vote on these. We have 10 categories of franchises. We want to find the best one. And they give you three choices. And I'm like, three choices? Like, so this isn't the best one. This is the best one out of the three people that paid you money to be on your list.
Mm, mm,
And
mm.
and I looked at it and I'm like, none of these are that great. Like some of these are brands that have stalled out for 5 years, and so now they're going to win an award or a second place or a third place when they don't belong to be on the award at all. So you can't follow the list. You really have to understand that. So as far as a good brand, the thing is there are some really great emerging brands, means it's a young brand, and if you're in the industry and you know the developers, we know, like we talk, we can't say what any one person's going to be able to do with it because it's you, it's your area, it's your customers. Nobody can predict that outcome, but you're like, this is going to be a good brand, this is going to be a big brand. We usually know those things,
Mhm.
but what I would say is I like to look at brands that have a little bit of replication, meaning that somebody has gone and taken off and gone and taken off and gone and taken off, not necessarily one store. When you talk about how much you can make, that is going to be listed in the franchise disclosure document. I don't go through the franchise disclosure document with me. That's between you and the brand, or I can have a franchise attorney. You don't want a regular attorney, they don't know what they're doing. You
Mhm.
have a franchise attorney that can go through the FDD and read it with you. It's written in simple English. You just may not understand the implications of some of the terminology of your responsibilities. But that's a great document. And so the 19th item out of 23 items is where they discuss a financial claim. And out of that, that's the only place or talking with the franchisees where you can learn what you'll make. Nowhere else.
Got
And
it.
that's what people have to stick to on numbers. And about 20% of franchises will make a financial claim. 20%. And some of those are great brands, but their attorneys say we don't want the liability. Just let them validate with franchisees. Don't tell
Yep.
people what they're going to make. But when they do put down an item 19, that's a huge indicator that they're a confident brand
In that number. Got
in
it.
that number. You can also, something that I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, but you can look at the gross sales of the organization and divide it by the number of units. That's in the FDD. And so
Mm-hmm.
you can just take the mystery out of it, and that's gross sales. It's not net, but you'll find it out. So that's one of the things. Strong marketing, but I don't like it necessarily if the company is forcing me to use only their marketing providers. I like to
Mm-hmm.
have the ability to use my own
Mm-hmm.
because I want to test it, right? Like even a good marketer today doesn't mean they're a good marketer next year or the year later. But replication is a big thing. Having a strong item 19 is a big thing. And then looking at the ratio of investment to income. That's your ROI. So if you have a high investment, some of that's great. I get some big wealthy investors are like, I don't want a cheap business because cheap businesses have a lot of competition, right? And even with that, I would just
So
say
give me an
that
example of give me an example of an investment on one of the more expensive ones.
well, you look at the size of the building, right? Because you're not paying for prestige. Like you don't like with clothes and cars, you're not paying more because of the name. You're paying because that's what it costs to do the business. So more would be something like maybe a salon suites, right? Where you have 25 to 50 uh, 400 square foot or whatever little suites, and people pay rent, and then they cut hair or do other beauty type businesses,
Mm-hmm.
and you're a landlord, and they just pay you rent. Simple
Mm-hmm.
business, one, two employees, costs a lot to get started, but if you have a good rent out rate, I mean, that could be a great thing. With that said, it's a great business. It can be a passive business, but if you look at the dollars invested, let's just say you have $1 million, $1.5 million, whatever it is to do that kind of business. If somebody, if I had that much money to invest, I could look at businesses that cost $200,000 and own 5 to 10 locations, and there is no way that business, dollar per dollar, can compete with what I see in the financials of this business. Because there's some businesses that show a bottom line net higher at 300,000 or less than a business that's a million and a half. So
Yeah. 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 I
you just
get
got to
that.
look at it. Then, like where are you going to put your money? Like you're choosing. Like, but if it's your passion, it's fine. If it's your passion or it's a need in the area, do
Well,
what you
my
want to
passion
do.
is rate of return and rate of effort on that return, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's true. That comes to the other thing is just vetting those financials and talking to those franchisees. I think is probably the biggest thing. I would imagine like the sweet spot is low entry point, high return with there's always something that has to like get moved on that threshold, but like my ideal is low investment, high return, and somebody else runs it, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's being self-managed by somebody else. And I think that that's kind of what probably people think the reality is, and they discover it's something other than that, right? They go, they're like, oh, I'm just going to buy this franchise and I'll make, whatever. And somebody else is going to run it. It's like, yeah. And now you've got to make sure that you're a good leader running those things, right? I heard, you don't have to name names, right? But there's certain franchises out there where really it's not one franchise where you kind of alluded to this a little bit. It's not one franchise. Like you start seeing that people start buying multiple franchises of the same thing because they understand the pattern. They're not making a lot of money on just one, but it's the aggregate of all of them, and it almost becomes like their little portfolio. Like, tell me a little bit about that. Do you find that people maybe diversify into other franchises, or are they going all in on one franchise type? I know Chick-fil-A, for example, doesn't let you do more than one. I mean, I guess rare exception you get two, right? I'm just curious how you think about that.
Well, there's a lot of stuff to unpack in there.
Yeah.
First, I want to say an expectation on price. Probably good franchise is going to be on the very low side, 150, and probably between 150 and 400.
Okay.
And with multiple locations, it will cost a little bit more, but there's always a discount when you get more. Just like when you go to Costco, the reason is they're not going to spend as much money to train and support you when you're. And every franchise wants multi-unit owners. Here's the reason, Rob. If you were going to have 100 locations as a franchisor, would you want 100 franchisees with one location, or would you like 10 franchisees with 10 locations?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The management headache of just 10 versus 100 is right. I want
Well,
10 that know what they're doing and executing the play at a high level.
yep, and to be able to afford 10, they're probably a high caliber person that has accomplished a lot. They're easier to talk to. They make way more money, so they're happier. They're not struggling with one because every location is going to perform slightly differently. So
Mm,
they're always doing incentives to try to have multi-unit owners because that is better for everybody. And then the cost of support. They only have to work with 10 people versus 100. The cost of support on the franchisor is far cheaper. So they always offer discounts for people who are multi-unit, and those people are more committed. As far as people owning multiple locations, those are generally the happiest people, is your multi-unit owners. I would say right
interesting.
now, if I was to I had the numbers a while back, but I think it's around 72%, 70 some percent of everybody I work with is a multi-unit owner. That's just what makes sense for them.
Lance, what's the data tell us? Like there's always that stat that people put up of, hey, I'm just making it up, like 70% of businesses fail year one, and then like another
Mhm.
80% fail like between year one and year five. Like, what does that look like for franchises? Like, is it better for franchises? Is the data the same as if somebody just went and opened up their own shop?
With franchises, that's a generalized term because it just means everybody in the industry averaged out.
Yeah.
And what I would say is it's like think about your high school class or whatever else. There's the people at the top, and there's the average dude, and then there's the people at the bottom, and that's no different with franchising. Some people go, my their business is their baby, right? My baby's the best, and it's
Yeah.
like the best, and people need this, and I'm like, I don't even understand what you're doing. Like, what is this business? I don't get it. So you know,
I've had
you
those conversations before. I'm like, this is a
yeah.
terrible idea. I don't get it.
Well, and then it's like instead of telling me, I just want to know. They're like, we have the lowest price, we have the most volume, the most innovative team, and it's like none of that stuff. I don't. I'm like, what do you do? And they're like, we make pancakes. I'm like, okay, well that's what you can't. Like just tell me what you do. But with these brands, some of them are really good, and some of them are really bad,
Yeah.
and some of them they had the best intentions, and then the cost of getting started, they didn't have it figured out. They weren't able to replicate what they were doing, and now they're in a tight spot, and now they're just trying to keep it going because they have to keep it going.
Hmm.
You want to. So I would say that 80% of franchise companies are not that great, and
Yeah.
20%, like probably 15% are really good, and 5% are off the charts. So
Yeah.
you really have to sift through it. And like when I was looking the other day for somebody who wanted something in home care for seniors and other people need in home care, I looked about 38 brands. Um, Having the perspective of looking at every brand's designed to look good. It's supposed to look good. So when you talk with one company, it just looks good. So if you have somebody who's in the industry who knows these people, who can
Mm.
evaluate it and has the perspective of seeing them not just now, but over time. Like maybe they've been talking to these companies for 8 years, 10 years, right? They know what's going on in the industry. You're going to walk in. It's just unfair. You're probably going to read some articles on Google and think that some blogger, because I used to do that when I was somebody's like I want a car wash, so I would Google car washes to try to research them, and I would call these companies like we're not a car wash, we're not a franchise. I'm like, well, you're on a list of top franchises, so there's garbage out there,
Interesting.
and so yeah, it's definitely you got to know what the good ones are because they're not all good. And the good ones are great. Like I've seen ones recently, they're doing so well that they're closing down development and markets just to let the existing franchisees get up and running and stabilized before adding new franchisees. So responsible growth.
What
Um,
about for anybody listening right now, the difference between them looking at buying a franchise
mhm.
versus getting a license, right? Do you deal with anybody like on the licensing side, or is it just
Like a
franchising?
business opportunity,
Well, I think, for example, CrossFit is not a franchise. CrossFit is a license model, right?
business opportunity.
Yeah, business. I guess. Okay, I guess that's what it's called. What?
Hmm.
Help me unpack that term, business opportunity.
They're cousins, and one is better for the right people. One is better, and for the other people, the other one's better. Um, some business opportunities are like, these small little coaching programs that you can buy, right? And some of them look like real big, legitimate franchise businesses, right?
Hmm.
And so the difference is with a franchise system, you're going to get all the training, you're going to get support, they're going to be with you ongoing for life. You are representing their brand, and so they're going to have some stuff to make sure that we all keep guardrails in there, right? And then they're going to keep track of your sales because they're getting a royalty, and what the royalty does is that funds the franchise. So all those people you're talking to, the people at corporate, the marketing people, all those, the royalties is what funds that. And
Hmm.
without royalties, it has to come from the corporate locations or the owner's pocketbook. So they want to try to get to 100 locations as quickly as possible because that's typically about where royalties start taking over. So if you have a younger brand, the reason that owner, not only are they excited to grow their brand, but the reason that owner is like really following up with you is because they're like, like we need to get this thing growing. So they're pretty flexible to work with you to get people, going and successful to make sure you're successful because your first 20 franchisees will decide if anyone else is going to be part of your system
Yeah.
or if everybody's going to say nope.
Yeah.
So, so with a franchise, you have that. With a business opportunity, you're not going to have a defined territory necessarily. Some do, but most don't. You don't in some situations you don't have to use the brand. You can make it, you know, Rob's Printing, right? You don't have to use their brand name, and they don't get any royalty from you. It's a one-time payment to get started. You get the coaching, you get the support, and then post-support, it might be, hey, we have an annual conference. You can come if you want, or we're going to hook up all the license owners together in their own group to support each other because they're not really competing with each other. And so you're going to have a lesser level of support, but you're going to pay no royalties. So it's like, less structure,
Yeah.
less costs. So it's whatever's good for you.
Yeah. It's interesting. We've indirectly learned a lot about this through the years, and I'm sure like we're going to continue to learn. We started expanding our sales teams into other markets. And the way we expand our sales teams, right? Like Kaza is one of our brands for our sales teams. We have multiple brands, but this is our sales team brand. Was a royalty, right? Royalty plus profit. So they're actually corporate owned. We own them in
Hmm.
partnership with somebody else. And I remember thinking, wow, it would be really hard to make money if this was just royalty only. You need a lot of these. And as it is, corporate owned, you still need a fair amount if you want to provide the services that those offices deserve, right? They need HR, accounting, finance, onboarding, coaching, recruit, like all of that, right? And so when you and I were talking before, and you were like, yeah, they need 100 just on the franchise model to start making money. I'm like, makes sense to me, right? Makes sense. And then Grid, our investment community, is a license model. So we license this model to a very particular avatar, an agent investor who understands our game, and they use our license to monetize their local business, right? Their local business is typically a sales team or an investment team, right? And even in the license model, it's one of these things where you want to, at least for us, we want to maintain the integrity of the brand, right? Like the brand matters, and yet we know that we can't be so restrictive like a franchise would be, and we don't get any revenue off of what they make, like at that local level, right? Like that's
Hmm.
all that community is there to help fund their investment business or their agent business, right? It's a lead gen tool for them, and so through the years we've kind of learned indirectly without meaning to, like these separate games. So like, part of you having you on the podcast here selfishly is learn a little bit more about that whole game, right? And you're validating a lot of thoughts that I have, especially with the franchise model, right? So do you also work with opportunity models, or are you only working with franchises?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. I work with ones that are. It's hard because you can't work with everybody because we said that not all brands are great, and some brands look great, and turns out that you know they don't have as much support as you thought. So
Yeah.
you're always learning and refining. And so it takes having a good solid owner that has confidence in themselves and is willing to you know really push forward. But yeah, I work with all that. Sometimes, like I have one that is a really good license model where they actually build out stores. Like, so a lot of people get these Amazon, have tried an Amazon business, right?
Hmm.
Well, it's harder than people think to you can just set it up, but it doesn't mean people come and buy anything, right?
Yeah.
So these companies, what they did is they started building it out for themselves, and they were very successful. And they're like, you know what, we'll save. If we can get some volume, we would will really do well. And so they decided we'll open up stores for other people. We'll run the marketing. We'll order the inventory. We'll respond to customers. We'll ship it out. And they have a huge warehouse. And if we just have more people on, we'll just buy, instead of buying $1 million of inventory, we can buy $200 million worth of inventory. We get such good pricing. And
Mm.
so they started doing that. And then people, if they want, they can take their store away and run it themselves if they want. But they'll do it for 30% of net. And you only need to talk to them like 30 minutes a month. And that's if you want to. Like, they'll just run it for you with your stuff, because the big thing is they're not just doing stuff randomly. Like, if you start your own, you just randomly pick something. They have the historical markers on how these products are
Yeah,
working.
they
They
know
look
the
at,
data behind it. Well,
yep.
interesting. They could actually take a percentage of the net, right? They could take a
Hmm.
percentage. I thought the licensing model only gave them like marketing rights. It doesn't give you like
Well, it's like a
rights for the
partnership.
revenue.
It's like a, so what they're doing is they're it's a management fee. They're managing everything. Like,
Oh,
they're even
got it.
handling customer support. So you're paying them a net to manage it for you. And there's only a one-time fee to get started. It's very inexpensive for a business. And then it doesn't take any of your time. And then you can either roll your profits each inventory turn. Let's say you buy $50,000 of inventory, or $20,000 of inventory, 100,000. You take your profits from the turn and go, do I want to pull it out? Or as an investor, do I want to take, my 100,000 plus, let's just say, I made 8%. So I have 108,000 now. Do I put 108,000 back in and then put 116,000 next time?
Yeah.
If you want to keep rolling it in and growing your inventory so you can make more money and just not touch it, smart way. But if you want, you can just keep pulling it out and live
Yeah,
on it,
one's
but
one's
you're
a
never going to get
one's an
more
equity
inventory.
play, one's a cash flow play, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's
So,
interesting.
and the reason that I think it works is you're only putting stuff on that they feel that they want to invest in, because they don't want to waste their time. Because if there's no profits, 30% of nothing is nothing,
Yeah.
you know. And the other thing is they have a direct incentive to run it and make it successful. Otherwise, they're doing all the work for what? Nothing. For
Yeah.
nothing. There's some great licensing models out there. Um, and I've seen some where there's some incredible. We talk about income as item 19. There's some incredible item 19 incomes. Even some that have an average, I have seen item 19s where you'll see show the average franchisee, their version of net, because everybody has like, you have EBITDAs, or you have gross sales minus disclosed expenses. Like there's all these different versions. But I've
Mm-hmm.
seen ones where their version is like 330 to the average owner. I've seen ones where the average franchisee does 9.9 million in gross sales. The
Mm-hmm.
average,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's all over the place, and it's really like finding that right business for the right people, and people that have commitment and confidence. And I would say that, yeah, I can help somebody who has as little as 30,000 liquid, and a credit score of 700 plus. But the ideal person is over 100 or 200,000 liquid. But I can help most people. It's just, you're going to need about 20% down if you
Mm-hmm.
do SBA.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're kind of like smaller businesses are like 150, but really you should really just plan on it being like 270.
Mm-hmm.
So 270, 20% of that. You just got to look at what you need to put in. And then you have to have what's called post-closing liquidity. No bank is going to say, I'm going to push all my money across the table and buy this business and have no money in my checking
Mm-hmm.
or savings. They're going to be like, no way. Because
Mm-hmm.
first of all, we don't think you're going to change your lifestyle at all, because we're not dummies. And the second one is you have no money for a backup, and you're going to be stressed out. So if someone wants a business where their cash injection would be $50,000, the bank might want to know that you have an extra $100,000 left over, so you have 150,000 in liquidity, and you're going to invest 50,000. They don't want it to where you're going to push all 150,000 across the table. That banks won't allow it. The franchisor won't allow it. So we have to look at people who have more resources, because they don't want you to invest. And if you do get multiple locations, that's a great way to save 20, 30, 50, $100,000 on franchise fees, which your franchise fee is your licensing. It's also the cost to train and support you off for the first year. You're paying for your training and support, you know. And then part of it's the cost to find and acquire you, because they have to kind of recuperate some of their development. So it's all built in there to try to cover their costs, so that they can hurry up and get enough franchisees to have royalty work. Now, some of them make really good. The franchisees make such good revenue that they don't need 100 locations to cash
Mm-hmm.
flow.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on the model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're an investor listening to this, right? Like, let's say you own properties. Whenever I think of like businesses today, I think of them as like little properties, right? Like assets. And I've got a multifamily and it spits out a certain amount of cash, and I've got a single family in an area and it spits out another bit of cash, and like these different areas and different property types are like different franchise locations in my mind. The more I do this, and I realize, oh yeah, this is just a math game on all of it, and but you have to have these basics down of understanding how to run businesses and lead people and sales and marketing and all the rest, which is why I go back to Bill's skills, because nobody can take those skills away from you. Those sales and marketing skills, those learning how to read a freaking P&L skill, which like, I got my ass handed to me 18 years ago because I didn't know how to read a P&L well, right? And then like that's how we learn. And then it became good for us after that. Once I understood, hey, this is the language of business. You got to get comfortable with the language of business, right? So, Lance, if somebody wants to get a hold of you to learn more about this, to potentially invest in a business, and when I think about franchises, I'll give you the benefit. I talk to so many people, and man, I was one of these people, right? Like, I just don't know what I don't know, so I decide that I'm going to go start a business without a financial model, without like a real good target avatar, without a real system or process, just like a dream and some hustle. And like you spend a good 3 or 4 years trying to figure it out,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like, what's the cost of trying to figure it out versus buying into a franchise, And what I heard you say very clearly was a franchise is really buying into a certain coaching system that has a certain widget that's already built, right? So, so that's one way to do it. Another way to do it would be go get a business coach in a very particular vertical, right? But then you still got to create all the SOPs. You still got to create all the marketing. You got to still create all the collateral. Great franchise would just be like, here it is. It's the business in a box, color by, paint by numbers type of thing, right? I would imagine that person succeeds at so much higher level if they actually do the work and follow it and paint by numbers. But if somebody wants to get a hold of you to learn more about doing that, right? Like, what's the best way?
Well, we're going to be, putting on a bunch of educational webinars and stuff. But until that comes, the best way to go is to go to my website, arcfranchising.com, and there's a calendar link on there, and you can schedule in. Same thing, you just go to speakwithlance.com. That's the best way to have just to have a conversation, because we have to see what your situation is, what you're trying to accomplish, what your background is, and then I have to look for what's still available in your area. Because even if I'm like, oh, we talk about these brands, oh, there's this great brand. Well, your area might be sold, or they might not be offering them in your state. So there's a lot of things that have to come together to show you. I usually try to show people, the top 7 to 12 companies that are still available in their area that kind of match their criteria, that I believe have the potential to maybe help them hit what they want.
I can't believe I didn't ask this earlier. But if I wanted to buy a franchise, right? Am I paying you a consulting fee to help me do it, or do you get compensated by the franchises? How does that work?
So it's your real estate business, right? So it's no different than the realtor model. So
Okay.
basically, it doesn't cost anybody anything. You don't pay more, or you don't save money because you don't work with me. It's the same. The franchisor will compensate me for my time, out of what they probably would have kept for their own internal usage.
Yeah,
So your price is the same, and you just get the free help and perspective and guidance all along the way.
that's cool. Very cool. Well, Lance, thank you so much for joining us on the Income Flip, brother. I appreciate it.
I'm glad to be here. Call me anytime.
Cool.